Incidentally, regarding the N word, and I'm sure Jamie will now double check what I'm saying, as he always does. There was a dean at some university, I think, out maybe in Seattle, I could be wrong, that at some point had suggested, someone had asked which book, a student had asked which book should I read, or I can't remember the exact story. And I think the title of the book was the N word. And she had, I think the dean was a woman, if I'm not mistaken, had simply recommended that book.
But she said the word out loud.
Or said he or she, I can't remember again the person's sex, got into trouble. So, I wonder if we shouldn't just sort of demystify this word. I mean, if people weren't so, I mean, we have to now say the N word.
Right.
We now have to say the R word. I got banned from Twitter for 12 hours because at one point I was interacting with some schmuck who I called retarded, degenerate, schmuck, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact combination of insults. And I was banned for using the R word. So, I mean, where does this end? I mean, how many more words do we have to remove from the lexicon? I mean, don't give these words so much power. Don't be so sensitive. I mean, I know we've talked about these kinds of issues in the past, but does it not seem to you outrageous that someone who recommends a book with the title being the N-word gets into trouble? I mean, it's insane.
Well, there's an even better one. Netflix, there was an executive at Netflix that was forced to resign due to my friend Tom Segura's comedy special. And my friend Tom Segura has a bit in his act about how there's certain words that are just gone, you can't use anymore. And he says, retard. He's like, that word, you can't use that word anymore. And he goes on, and it's not about using that word. He's not justifying the use of the word. He's just simply stating that this is a word that you could no longer use. So they get attacked, a bunch of letter writing campaign from mental health organizations and people dealing with people that have disabilities, and are saying that you're being ableist and you're being discriminatory and all these different things, and they're basically trying to silence him. Even though if you look at the actual bit itself, he's not using it to describe a person. It's just essentially acknowledging that the word exists. So this guy who's an executive at Netflix says in a meeting, you can't use that word because that word, it's like saying nigger around black people.
Right.
Just says that.
You're going to get in trouble now.
No, I said it in the earlier show too. I'm just saying, when I read Sargon of Akkad's thing, it's preposterous to say the N-word. And I've said the N-word before, and in most cases I will say it, but he actually said the word. And the reason why he said the word, and the reason why I just said the word, is because he was trying to demonstrate like that this is an offensive thing, like saying retard is just like saying that. He gets fired for that, for simply making this comparison that, and we're talking about uncensored stand-up comedy. By the way, this is a network that features that word prominently on several different comedy specials in multiple situations. Whether it's Cat Williams, multiple uses of the word, Dave Chappelle. I mean, that word gets thrown about like a beach ball at a fucking concert. That word gets tossed around a lot. But this guy's saying it because he's white. They're like, enough of your work here, sir.
Speaking of comedy and sort of political correctness with comedy, in my forthcoming book, I have a section where I talk about professors who got into trouble. I mean, we've all heard about the comedians getting into trouble for violating some politically correct dictum, but professors, in many cases, very, very high-profile professors, getting in trouble for incredibly innocuous jokes. And actually, I brought a list of names because I thought I might not remember them. Can I mention a few?
Sure.
A few of the cases? So Lazar Greenfield, who was the president-elect of the American College of Surgeons, and the editor-in-chief of a journal called Surgery News, had written an editorial a few years ago where he was talking about the antidepressant benefits of coming in contact with sperm. In other words, and this was based on a peer-reviewed scientific paper. Actually, two of the authors of that paper are folks that I know quite well, friends of mine. And they had demonstrated that women who have protected sex versus unprotected sex end up scoring differently on these depressive measures. In other words, there was some sort of protective element to actually being exposed to sperm. And so in his editorial, he made a joke. It was during Valentine's. He said, so now there is a gift that a man can give a woman that's beyond flowers or chocolates or something to that effect. He had to step down from being president of the American College of Surgeons. He had to step down from being editor-in-chief because a whole bunch of women were very offended by that sperm joke. Now, the authors of the paper in question wrote a brilliant response where they said, how could he be treated in this way when all he was doing is actually literally reporting the data, the findings from our peer-reviewed study? So that's one example. Another example is Sir Tim, I think it's Sir Tim Hunt, who was a Nobel Prize winner in 2001.
I remember this one, yeah.
Right. Who he was speaking, I think, in Korea at a women in science conference, where he very, in a jocular way, said, it's a real problem when you have women in your lab. They fall in love with you, you fall in love with them, and so it's better to have segregated labs. His wife, by the way, is a staunch feminist who's a very prominent scientist, and she confirmed that he's hardly, a rabid sexist. He went through all sorts of hell.
Yeah, I remember that, and he was joking.
And he was joking, and in the book I discussed several other of these examples. So imagine, you would think that a unblemished, exemplary career as a scientist, up to getting a Nobel Prize, could potentially protect you. But one comment that someone decides can unleash the tsunami of outrage, and you're dead.
Well, I think the problem is reacting to the people that are reacting to the comment.
Right.
It's not the comment itself. It's the cowards that are running things that give in to that. And the Netflix thing is particularly disturbing because it was internal. It was people that were working in this department that apparently went and protested, and they just decided that his use was egregious and he shouldn't be able to say those sounds with his face.
See, I get a lot of letters from people asking me, well, I'm facing a similar situation. What should I do, Professor Zout? And my answer is fight back hard. So I've had a couple of these situations. I had a guy on Twitter, the guy whom I referred to as a retard, started contacting my university, trying to get me fired. When it wasn't working with his tagging my university on Twitter, he actually contacted the HR department, the human resources department at my university. This is a random person.
It's a troll. You got in touch with a troll, and you gave him what he wanted, attention, and then he just started to run with it. You basically gave him an opportunity to score. He's playing a video game.
Exactly. But now here's what happened. The university's HR person contacts me after hours. I mentioned this actually recently on the Rubin Report. The lady in question contacts me to say, look, here's a complaint that's been filed against you. Now, my first instinct was, someone in my job as a professor at the university has complained about me, which I couldn't think who that would be. But I would think that that's where the template of their influence over me would reside. No. They had actually taken seriously a random person on Twitter contacting them and filing a complaint under the guise of he's a student. Well, he's not my student, right? I mean, if a student accosts me in an alley to mug me, I can't fight back because, he's a student, or I'm allowed to deck him, right? So this is a guy that I'm just having fun with. I mean, I'm doing it with a smile. We're going back and forth. Decides that he's willing to go as far as try to get me fired. Now, let's suppose that he had succeeded. Let's suppose that I hadn't fought back, because basically what I did with the university, I said, are you literally thinking that it is reasonable for you to be monitoring what I do on my Twitter account? And the example I gave her as an analogy, I said, if I see you coming out of a pharmacy with your daughter and I feel that you're speaking to her in a curt manner that I don't agree with as a parent, can I report you to the university? And that pretty much ended the conversation very quickly. But the fact that they felt sufficiently emboldened to actually reach out to me to address this complaint shows you how chilling the environment is.